Amina had always dreamed of working at one of the top marketing firms in Lusaka. When she finally landed the job, it felt like all her hard work had paid off. She gave everything to her role: late nights, early mornings, and endless creativity. Her ideas got noticed. Her boss, Mr. Tembo, even hinted at a possible promotion. Everyone could see she was going places. Then, everything changed. One afternoon, Amina sat across from Mr. Tembo in his glass-walled office and nervously shared her news. She was pregnant. At first there was silence, then a long sigh. Mr. Tembo looked her in the eyes and said coldly, "This is a battlefield, not a nursery." Her heart sank. She forced a smile, hoping it was just a bad joke. But the mood shifted. Meetings became fewer. Her tasks were reassigned. Co-workers avoided her gaze. Just a few days later, she was called into HR. They told her that her position had been restructured. No warning, no explanation, just a letter and a handshake. Amina walked out of that building in a daze, her dreams shattered in an instant. The same doors that once welcomed her with promise now shut her out without mercy. She felt humiliated, betrayed, but more than that, she felt invisible, like all her hard work, her loyalty, her passion, meant nothing now that she was carrying life inside her. And just like that, her dream job turned into a nightmare. Amina couldn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one hand resting on her belly, the other wiping away silent tears. It didn't feel real. Just days ago, she was being praised for her work. Now, she was unemployed, with no warning, no apology, and no support. She kept replaying everything in her mind, wondering if she had done something wrong. Had she said the wrong thing? Worked too hard? Trusted too much? What hurt the most wasn't just being fired, it was how quickly everyone forgot her. The same co-workers who once laughed with her during lunch, who asked for her help on projects, now acted like she never existed. No texts, no calls, just silence. It was like her presence had been erased the moment they heard the word pregnant. She walked past one of them at the supermarket. He saw her and turned away, like he didn't know her. That stung more than the firing itself. Then came the whispers. Someone told her that people at the office were saying she wasn't focused anymore, that she brought it on herself. It made her sick. After everything she had given, the late nights, the stress, the sacrifices, they reduced her to gossip and lies. She wanted to scream. She wanted to disappear. For a few days, she barely ate. Her phone rang, but she didn't answer. She didn't want pity. She didn't want advice. She wanted justice, but didn't know where to even begin. But in her quietest moment, as she sat by the window one morning, watching the sun rise over Lusaka's rooftops, she felt something. Her baby kicked. For the first time, she smiled. That tiny movement reminded her of something she had almost forgotten. She was still building something powerful, something beautiful, life, and that meant something. That had to mean something. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered, "I don't know what's next, but I promise I'll make a place for us." The more she thought about it, the clearer it became. If they wouldn't give her space to grow, she would build her own space. If they shut the door, she would create a whole new room. For herself, for her baby, for every woman who had ever been told she didn't belong just because she dared to create life. Amina wiped her tears, stood up, and took a deep breath. She wasn't just going to survive, she was going to rise. Not in spite of her pregnancy, but because of it. Amina could have given up. No one would have blamed her. She had every reason to feel broken, every excuse to stay down. But something inside her wouldn't let her quit. Maybe it was the quiet strength growing in her belly. Maybe it was the pain of betrayal still fresh in her chest. Or maybe it was the stubborn fire in her that had always whispered, "You were made for more." She wiped her tears and got to work. The first thing she did was open a small wooden box hidden in her closet. Inside were gold earrings from her mother, a chain from her graduation day, a bracelet gifted on her first job offer. Each piece held a memory, but now they had a new purpose. She sold them one by one, her heart aching with every goodbye. But she reminded herself, "I'm not losing these, I'm trading them for a new beginning." Then she called the bank and accessed a small inheritance her grandmother had left her years ago. It wasn't much, but it was something, enough to register a business, buy a second-hand laptop, and print a few flyers. She didn't have an office, so she cleared the small dining table in her one-bedroom flat in Kabwe and turned it into a workspace. That table, once used for meals and baby books, now held her dreams. She named her business AmaGrowth, a mix of her name and the word she held close, growth. She was building something out of nothing, and she knew exactly where to start. Instead of chasing big companies like the one that tossed her aside, she turned to women like her, entrepreneurs with vision but no voice. Her first clients were small, women-owned businesses, a lady who made natural hair products in her backyard, another who sold handmade dresses from her veranda, and one who baked cookies but didn't know how to get people to notice. Amina offered more than just marketing. She listened to their stories, helped them build brand names, designed logos, created simple ads for social media, and taught them how to tell their stories with pride. She didn't charge much at first. Sometimes she was paid in baked goods, sometimes in gratitude, but every project added to her portfolio. Every success boosted her confidence. At night, she worked while her belly grew. She'd rest her laptop on a pillow beside her, editing social media posts while the baby kicked. Her room smelled of coffee, printer ink, and dreams. Her fingers were tired, her back often ached, but her spirit stayed sharp. Word started to spread. Clients referred friends. Amina's phone buzzed more often. "You helped my cousin," someone would say. "Can you help me too?" And just like that, a small spark became a flame. She didn't need a glass office or a big-name firm to prove her worth. She had everything she needed: her skills, her passion, her purpose, and a reason bigger than herself. The same betrayal that once broke her heart had now become her fuel. Every no she'd ever heard pushed her to create her own yes. And in that little flat in Kabwe, surrounded by papers, baby clothes, and hope, Amina began building something no one could take away from her. At first, Amina was just hoping to make ends meet. She didn't expect anything big, just enough to buy baby diapers, pay rent, and stay afloat. But something powerful started happening. Her clients weren't just happy, they were thriving. The woman selling natural hair products. She started supplying local salons. The dressmaker, her designs went viral on Facebook. The baker, she got a small contract to supply cookies to a school. One by one, Amina's clients started winning, and they made sure everyone knew who helped them get there. Word spread like wildfire. One happy customer posted a thank you note on WhatsApp. Another tagged AmaGrowth on Facebook. Amina was getting messages at midnight. "Hi! I heard you helped Mama Thandi's hair brand. Can you help me too?" Even a small community radio station in Kabwe mentioned her work during a women's empowerment segment. People were curious. Who was this young woman turning side hustles into real businesses? Amina's phone never stopped ringing. She barely had time to eat, let alone rest. But she didn't complain. She had worked so hard to be heard, and now the world was finally listening. Her one-bedroom flat turned into a full-time office. She moved her baby's crib into her own bedroom just to create more workspace. Her walls were now filled with calendars, sticky notes, and vision boards. And in between Zoom meetings and feedings, she kept building. She trained herself in digital marketing trends, taught herself basic accounting, and watched online tutorials late at night while rocking her baby to sleep. Clients admired her, not just for her skill, but for her heart. Amina didn't treat people like numbers. She treated them like partners. She listened. She advised. She cared. That's what made her different. Within 2 years, AmaGrowth wasn't just a name. It was a brand, a trusted name in Lusaka's business circle, the kind of agency that gave results and lifted voices no one else cared to hear. She expanded beyond small businesses and began working with mid-sized companies. Then came the call that changed everything. A corporate brand wanted her to manage a full product launch. Amina nearly dropped the phone. She delivered. Big time. That one project led to another, and then another. Before long, AmaGrowth had 3 major corporate clients on its books. Clients that once worked with fancy agencies were now choosing her, not because of shiny offices or big title, but because of results, because of impact. As her workload grew, so did her team. Amina posted a hiring notice, looking for interns who want to learn and grow with a purpose-driven agency. The CVS started pouring in, and when she sat down to go through the names, one made her stop in surprise. It was a familiar name, one of the interns from her old job, someone who had once been laughed at by Mr. Tembo for being too quiet, too soft. Amina smiled. A few weeks later, she welcomed 2 new interns to the AmaGrowth family. Both had come from the same FI, Amina never forgot how it felt to be pushed out just because she was pregnant. That pain stayed with her, but instead of letting it harden her, she let it guide her. She made a quiet promise to herself. No woman working for her would ever feel the way she did, unwelcome, unsupported, or unworthy. As AmaGrowth continued to rise, Amina made sure it wasn't just a business, it was a safe space. She started a small program to train women who had taken time off for childbirth and now wanted to return to work. Some had been out for months, others for years. Many felt nervous, like the world had moved on without them, but Amina saw their strength, not their gaps. She offered free weekend workshops to teach digital skills, branding, social media strategy, and even how to rebuild confidence. These sessions were filled with laughter, tears, and the powerful energy of women who were finally being seen. Soon, those same women were joining her team. One of her proudest moments was opening AmaGrowth's first real office space. It wasn't in a fancy building, but it had everything that mattered: desks, internet, a break room, and a colourful, cozy daycare corner right inside the office. Mothers could bring their babies to work, knowing they were safe and close. "We don't ask you to leave your life at the door," Amina would say with a smile. "We grow with it." People started talking, and not just clients, everyone. Her story spread on social media, pictures of her with her team, working while holding babies, giving talks at women's conferences, and handing out awards at her training sessions began going viral. She was invited to speak on Lusaka's top radio shows and featured in local magazines. Young women tagged her in their Instagram posts, calling her Mama Growth and Queen of the Comeback. Even people who had never met her felt inspired by her journey. While Amina was building up, something else was quietly falling apart. The same company that once fired her, the one that told her pregnancy had no place in business, was starting to crumble. Rumors started swirling. Key clients had pulled out. Projects were delayed. Top staff were quitting. Then came the news. They were laying off people, cutting budgets, losing contracts. And one by one, those lost contracts, they landed in Amina's inbox. It was never her goal to bring anyone down. She didn't set out for revenge. But life has a way of coming full circle. Clients who once worked with her old firm were now turning to AmaGrowth. Why? Because she delivered real results. Because she treated clients like partners, not numbers. Because her brand wasn't just smart, it was human. And that's what people were hungry for. She didn't gloat. She didn't post bitter tweets or throw shade in interviews. She simply worked harder, served better, and built louder. Every time she walked into her office, passing the daycare corner and seeing women brainstorming ideas around the table, she felt proud, not just of what she had created, but of how she created it. Amina had conquered the very system that once rejected her, but instead of becoming like them, she created something better, kinder, braver, more powerful. And the best part, she was just getting started. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when Amina's lawyer walked into her office with a folder in hand and a curious look on his face. He placed the papers on her desk and said, "You'll want to see this." She opened the folder slowly, not expecting much. But as her eyes scanned the page, her heart stopped. It was a listing for a commercial building that had just gone on sale. But not just any building, the one where her entire life had changed, the one where she had sat across from Mr. Tembo, heard the words, "This is a battlefield, not a nursery," and walked out broken. The one where her dreams had been dismissed with a cold handshake. She stared at the address. She remembered the colour of the tiles in the lobby, the echo in the hallway, the view from the 5th floor where she used to sit. She had once walked into that place full of hope and walked out of it with nothing but pain. Now it was for sale. Without blinking, Amina looked up and said, "Buy it." Her lawyer raised an eyebrow. "You want to make an offer?" She smiled, calm and certain. "No, I want the whole thing, every floor." In the weeks that followed, the deal moved quickly. AmaGrowth had grown into a powerhouse, and Amina had formed a new branch, Ama Holdings Limited, to manage her real estate interests. She didn't need a loan. She didn't need investors. She had built enough, saved enough, and planned well. She bought it quietly, with no big announcement, no media splash, just paperwork, signatures, and power. One by one, each floor of that building became hers. A few months later, letters were sent out to every tenant in the building. Professional, polite, but clear. The building had a new owner, Under AmaHoldings Limited, rent would be adjusted to reflect current market rates. Terms would be reviewed. Contracts would be updated. People started whispering. Who had bought the building? Who was AmaHoldings? Some thought it was a foreign investor. Others guessed a retired politician. No one imagined it was Amina, and she didn't tell anyone, not yet. She visited the building a few times in secret, walking the halls like a ghost with unfinished business. She stood in front of the same office door where she had once been fired. It looked smaller now, less intimidating. She touched the handle and whispered to herself, "Look how far you've come." She had no intention of throwing anyone out. This wasn't revenge. It was a statement, a quiet, powerful move to reclaim her story. She knew some tenants would leave. Some would stay and adjust. Either way, the building now stood as a symbol of her journey, from dismissed to decision-making. Amina returned to her office later that day, sat at her desk, and looked out the window with a deep breath. She didn't feel anger anymore. She felt peace. What once was the site of her greatest humiliation had now become part of her legacy. No one gave her a seat at the table, so she bought the whole building. The sun was high that day, casting long shadows across the lobby floor of the very building where Amina's life had once taken a painful turn. The marble tiles still gleamed the same way, but something had changed, something big. The building was no longer just a place. It was a symbol, and soon it was about to host a moment that felt straight out of a movie. Mr. Tembo walked in wearing the same confident strut he'd always had. His suit was neatly pressed, his briefcase polished, and his assistant trailing behind him with papers. He had received a notice about rent changes under a new property owner, AmaHoldings Limited, and had come to negotiate. He didn't think much of it, just another landlord trying to squeeze more out of tenants. He had done it himself to others. Now, the tables had simply turned, so he thought. The receptionist greeted him politely and said, "You're here to meet the building's new owner, correct? Right this way." He followed her to the elevator, still clueless. They stopped at the top floor, an office that had recently been renovated, the walls clean and modern, with bold branding, AmaHoldings Limited. He stepped out of the lift, straightened his jacket, and walked into the meeting room, expecting a stiff business type, or maybe some foreign investor. But there, seated behind the desk, was Amina, calm, poised, powerful. His steps slowed, his eyes widened, his mouth opened, but no words came out. "Amina?" he gasped, blinking as if he couldn't trust what he was seeing. You? You own this?" She stood up with a quiet smile, walked around the desk, and extended her hand. "Good to see you again, Mr. Tembo," she said, her voice smooth, confident. "Welcome to the top floor of a battlefield." Silence. For a long moment, he just stared at her. It was clear. He had never imagined this. Not in 1,000 years. The girl he once dismissed as too emotional, too soft, too pregnant to lead, now sat across from him as the owner of the very building he worked in. I had no idea," he stammered. "I didn't know you were involved in real estate." She smiled wider, but there was no arrogance in her face, just grace. "You didn't know a lot of things about me, sir, but life has a funny way of teaching lessons." He nodded slowly, clearly embarrassed. "I guess congratulations are in order." She tilted her head. "Thank you. And don't worry, we treat all tenants fairly. This meeting is just business. But I'll admit, it's nice to finally see eye to eye." There was no need to shout, no need for revenge speeches. Her presence alone said everything. She didn't come to prove herself. She didn't need to. She was the proof. As the meeting wrapped up, Mr. Tembo stood awkwardly, holding the new lease proposal in his hand. "You've come far," he said softly. Amina looked out the large window behind her, the city stretching wide and bright. "I've only just begun." He left with quiet steps and a shaken pride. Meanwhile, Amina sat back in her chair, letting the moment settle into her bones. This was what full circle felt like. The same building that once pushed her out now belonged to her, and all she had needed was belief in herself, in her worth, in her story. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply becoming everything they said you couldn't. Amina could have stopped at success. She had built a thriving company, become a respected name in business, and even bought the very building where she was once rejected. But deep down, she knew her story wasn't just about her. It was about every woman who had ever been made to feel small because she chose to create life. It was about those who sat in offices swallowing tears, hiding baby bumps, and apologizing for being human. So she began to speak. What started as small Instagram posts turned into powerful blogs. She wrote openly about being fired for being pregnant, about breastfeeding during Zoom calls, about changing diapers between meetings. Her words were raw, real, and relatable, and they spread like wildfire. Soon, women from Zambia, Kenya, South Africa, and even beyond started messaging her. Some said, "You told my story." Others said, "You gave me courage." One woman wrote, "I was going to quit today, but I read your post and decided to fight." Then came the call that changed everything. African Business Weekly wanted to interview her. The editor said, "You're not just running a company, you're rewriting the rules." The interview was held in her new office, with her daughter sitting on her lap during part of it. She spoke softly but firmly, explaining why maternal rights mattered, not just for women, but for entire economies. "You can't talk about growth and leave mothers out of the picture," she said. "We're not a burden, we're the backbone." But it was one quote that lit up the internet. Pregnancy isn't a weakness, it's proof we create legacies. Within hours, it was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, even TikTok. Influencers quoted her. Business leaders reposted it. Someone printed it on a t-shirt. Another wrote it in bold letters across a mural in Lusaka. Women started sharing their pregnancy journeys under the hashtag #WeCreateLegacies. Amina became more than an entrepreneur. She became a movement. She was invited to panels on women's leadership. She gave talks at universities. She met with HR leaders to help them create policies for expectant mothers. She built free toolkits for small businesses on how to support mums at work. Simple steps like flexible hours, maternity leave, and on-site childcare. And most of all, she kept sharing her story. Not the polished version, but the full journey. The fear, the firing, the loneliness, the rebuilding, the rise. Her vulnerability made her powerful. Women who had been silent for years began speaking up. Some confronted their companies. Others started their own. Stories poured in. One woman in Nigeria wrote, "I read your quote and walked into my boss's office with my head held high. For the first time, I didn't feel ashamed." Even some men joined the conversation. They began asking how to support working mothers better. Some changed policies at their company. Others simply said, "Thank you." Amina didn't just rewrite her own narrative. She helped thousands of women rewrite theirs too. She showed them that motherhood and ambition didn't have to be enemies, that you could carry a child and a dream at the same time, that your value didn't end with a baby bump, it began. And every time she passed that quote painted on the wall outside her building, "Pregnancy isn't a weakness, it's proof we create legacies," she smiled, because she wasn't just leading a company anymore, she was leading a revolution.
Amina had always dreamed big, but what came next was beyond anything she had imagined. AmaGrowth was no longer just a small firm born out of heartbreak. It had grown into a powerful, respected name across Zambia. But Amina didn't stop there. Within a few short years, the company expanded into 3 countries, Botswana, Kenya, and Malawi. Every new branch carried the same mission, to uplift, empower, and create space for women in business who were too often overlooked. But even as the company grew, Amina stayed grounded in her purpose. She didn't just want to build an empire. She wanted to build a legacy. She began working closely with NGOs that focused on women and families. Together, they launched a scholarship program that gave working mothers the chance to go back to school, whether it was to finish high school, study business, or learn a trade. These scholarships changed lives. Women who had once given up on their dreams began dreaming again. And it wasn't just about education. It was about dignity, hope, and a fresh start. Amina knew what it felt like to be counted out, to be told, "Not now," or "Not you." So she created a world where women heard, "Yes, you matter," and "We believe in you." And then came the day she stood in front of her building, the very one she had once walked out of in tears, and gave it a new name. Mwanakazi Towers. Woman of Strength. She didn't name it after herself. She named it after every woman who had ever carried too much but kept walking. Every woman who had been told she couldn't and still did. Every mother, every sister, every fighter. The grand reveal was emotional. People came from all over Lusaka to watch the new sign go up. News outlets covered it. Social media exploded. A photo of Amina and her daughter standing hand in hand beneath the Mwanakazi Towers sign went viral. The caption simply read, "We rise, not alone, but together." Her daughter, now a curious and bright-eyed little girl, visited the office often. She would walk confidently through the hallways, greeting staff by name. Sometimes she would sit in meetings beside her mother, listening carefully, doodling in her notebook, or pretending to lead a team of her own. "She's going to run this place one day," the staff would say with a smile. But more than just running a company, Amina was showing her what leadership looked like. Not the kind that shouts to be heard, but the kind that listens, uplifts, and stays rooted in truth. She showed her that strength can be quiet. That fire doesn't have to burn things down, it can light the way. Mwanakazi Towers became more than just a building. It became a hub for women-led businesses, a space for mentorship programs, networking events, and child-friendly workspaces. Amina made sure the walls echoed not just with meetings and pitches, but with laughter, learning, and the sound of children playing in the daycare center she built on the 3rd floor. One day, after a long day of work, Amina sat on a bench outside the building with her daughter resting against her shoulder. "Mama," the little girl asked, "why did you name the building Mwanakazi?" Amina smiled gently. "Because it means woman of strength. And I want you to always remember, you come from a line of strong women. And you, my love, are one too." As the sun set over the city, casting a golden glow over Mwanakazi Towers, Amina knew deep in her heart, this wasn't just about business anymore. It was about legacy. One made of fire, grace, and unshakable love. Years later, the moment arrived, the kind that makes you pause, breathe deep, and realize just how far you've come. Amina had been invited to speak at a major leadership summit in Lusaka. It was a packed event. CEOs, investors, students, journalists, everyone who was anyone in the business world was there. The venue? The same building where her journey had started, and nearly ended. Mwanakazi Towers. As she stepped onto the stage, wearing a deep red dress and her signature quiet confidence, the lights dimmed. Her name appeared on the screen behind her, Amina Mwansa, founder and CEO of AmaGrowth, visionary behind Mwanakazi Towers. The crowd clapped as she walked to the microphone. But in the front row, someone sat still. Mr. Tembo. Older now. His hair grayer. His expression unreadable. Amina saw him, and smiled gently. Not with revenge. Not with pride. But with peace. She began to speak, telling her story with honesty and heart. From the day she was fired for being pregnant, to the moment she signed her first client, to building offices that welcomed both ambition and motherhood. Her voice didn't shake. Her truth carried the room. And when she ended with the words, what they used to call weakness, I now call legacy, the entire hall stood in applause. People wiped tears. Cameras flashed. And even Mr. Tembo slowly stood, clapping quietly, a small nod of respect on his face. Outside, on the wall near the entrance, sunlight hit a golden plaque. It read, "From fire to founder, Amina's story began here." And just beneath it, a quote engraved for every woman to see. "We are not just building businesses. We are building futures." Amina had won. But more importantly, she had changed the game. Forever.